few days ago, we released a review of the Smashing Pumpkins Autumn Act 2, and it's safe to say a lot of the feedback was very willing. And here at Indie Miners, we certainly take on all kinds of feedback, but we thought we'd take this opportunity to explain a little bit more how we see the Pumpkins and where they're at, especially after the first two releases of the autumn epic that they're releasing. So the way in which we're going to do this, we're going to address this in four parts. So firstly, look at the vocals and the lyrics. Secondly, the focus on electric or electronic instruments over guitars, which is one of the things that was put to us around our potential bias in that area. The third is the perceived lack of band collaboration. So one around whether James Iyer or Jimmy Chamberlin are actually being used to their full potential. And last but not least, this whole concept that 33 albums is actually a good thing, which we beg to differ. So, Al, good morning to you. Look, I thought just out of the two of us, you're probably the harsher of us around the review. I just thought if you wanted to sort of kick things off and if you had sort of anything to say to our viewers.
Yeah, good morning, mates. First of all, to all of our viewers, thank you so much for all the comments and the love that you guys provided us. But to come out and say this is not an apology video, this is just to clarify our thinking and thoughts about the Pumpkins and where they might be going to into the future, mate. So I'm looking forward to kind of having an open dialogue with you, and hopefully our fans can join in and chuck their 2 cents in the comments, but definitely not an apology video, mate. Here at Indie Minders, we say how we...
Terrific. Fantastic. Well said. So let's kick things off. So the vocals and lyrics, mate, what did you have to say about that area?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I think Billy Corgan has one of the most unique voices still in the business, but I think he's struggling these days recording his voice probably how he wants it to come across, and it comes across quite harsh. I personally think because the album isn't able to sustain the glory days of being able to write really good songs with really, really good lyrics and then doubled up with a really good melody and sound combined with James Ihars guitar and Jimmy Chamberlin on the drums, I think his voice is standing out even more and it's just a little bit too harsh. And I think particular songs like Hooray were just a really, really hard listen and really quite hard on the ears. But I really think that Billy's voice has a certain place. And like some of the songs that he's written, like Tonight and Stand Inside Your Love, you just think, who else could sing this and put their stamp on it? But for me, mate, his voice, I don't know, there's just something about it. And I know you've got something to say. So what have you got to say about his voice, mate?
Look, I was going to agree with you, mate. Look, I think that certainly his voice is not a strength. I don't think it ever has been. But having said that, like you said, Tonight, a lot of the songs that he'd wrote and sang for back in the early days, look, his range could go quite high. But nonetheless, it was unusual, still an unusual voice back then. It still is now. But it has regressed over the years. And I think that instead of really sort of working with that, which a lot of artists do, he's sort of gone more to the other way and pushed the vocals up the mix. So that is very grating to hear from me personally. But he is also using auto-tune. It's very clear that they're using auto-tune technology to paper over some of the cracks. So I just think that absolutely agree that you could work with his voice if it was, I guess, dealt with appropriately. He's just going the other way with it, and it's almost a bit of an FU, I would have thought, and I don't think it's very delightful to listen to be quite honest. So, yeah, couldn't agree more. So the second one that we're looking at is around the instrumentation or the lack of so-called guitar-driven rock. So some of the things that he was really focused on in the 90s. And look, I'd like to say that there's probably nothing further from the truth. I mean, here we do listen to a variety of artists, and you know, in particular, there's a lot of artists out there whose best work isn't necessarily around the guitar, even though if that was the first instrument that they played. But I just did see a little bit too much of a focus on these synthesizer instruments, it does remind me of a lot of artists back in the 80s who came from the 70s, who almost sort of saw this as being a bit of a gap filler, so an easy way to produce content by just sort of focusing on these particular instruments. And it feels like there was too much a reliance on them. They don't sound particularly good. Again, I don't see them as being a particular strength. Mate, did you sort of have any observations yourself just around that?
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more, and I think it has been really used as kind of filler to fill these 33 songs. All I can say is that I'm really missing the familiar sounds of the Smashing Pumpkins going back years ago, and I was really hoping that they were able to kind of recreate something, but I just think there's certain key instruments just missing, which is what I was hoping for. But maybe I'm getting old, mate, and maybe this is the way the bands are going to be making albums, but it's just not for me.
It's the future, mate. It's the future. Now, we'll go on to our next one. So band collaboration. So this one's a bit harder to pinpoint, isn't it? I mean, where do you see this, and just your observations of whether these band members, these other guys in the band, they're not being utilised?
Well, it's a bit of an unknown. I really don't know if James Iha and Jimmy Chamberlain actually recorded on this album. I'm assuming so. There's no great details yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if Billy Corgan did most of the recording himself, and he'll chuck the boys in the back of the bandwagon with the pro wrestling team and head out onto Australia for what will be a very interesting tour. But I personally think that key familiar collaboration between the band is missing, and it's more of Billy's direction than what the Smashing Pumpkins would usually kind of produce. And for me, that's a real vital ingredient is the collaboration. And I think if Billy's to kind of finish up with Act 3 and maybe kind of go in a different direction, because I am conscious that this is a rock opera, and not every day do bands release a rock opera, so maybe they have done a good job, but I just think there's just a vital ingredient missing, which is the collaboration, mate. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, I agree. It's very hard to put your finger on without fully knowing who played what. But I remember back in the 90s that Billy Corgan was being accused of playing Darcy's and James Iha's instruments, but I can see that that's sort of more so now. I don't see James Iha playing the keyboards. There's more keyboards, so that's clearly something he's not doing. But I do sort of call back some of the James Iha songs that he sung that were turned up on B-sides, and the guitar on that, and you can clearly sort of see the James Iha influence in that as well on other tracks by the Pumpkins back then. You just see it less now. It's just a bit hard to know whether that's true or not, but my gut feel is, and I've said this before, that it feels like James Iha is probably phoning in, taking a pension check, and just sort of not necessarily needing or wanting to be involved, but just happy to show up.
And that's interesting, mate, because he actually came out to say that he wasn't keen to do this 33 epic rock opera at all. So whether or not he's actually been a part of it, jury's out. I just don't know.
It is, and it's a bit of a shame, because I think that he does actually add something to the mix, and I think a lot of people who are Pumpkins fans would agree with that.
Yep.
So the last one is really around this whole concept that more is more. So 33 songs, what an effort. Look, I think kudos to him for producing 33 songs. It's a really difficult challenge. I don't think if anyone has been into songwriting and knows what's involved with doing that, I think that it's extraordinary he's been able to do that and keep it up after all of these years. But look, for me, I think he had a great talent in producing volumes back in the day. So specifically Melancholy, that was a double album. The Aeroplane Flies High, the box set, was almost double the amount of songs. And I think there were other songs that didn't actually make the box set that were also recorded. So he's renowned for all of that. And even his, the songs that didn't make Melancholy, like Rotten Apples, for example.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favourite Smashing Pumpkins songs. But I feel as if, and this is what happens with a lot of artists, that they do fall in after their initial success into a sort of a much more of a more average type of style. So they do settle into a certain style that becomes a little bit less variable, a little bit more monotonous. And I think what you need to be careful of if you fall into that. So I include Weezer as a band that's probably similar in that regard. You have to be obviously careful in producing more output that is actually interesting to the punters, and I think this is where the Pumpkins could reflect on that in maybe producing less output, maybe focusing on the songs that really would keep people buzzed, and focusing less on everything else. And I think that might help with the quality of output overall. I mean, there's going to be an extra 10 songs that are going to be released after the 33 songs. It's insane. Look, and I wouldn't be surprised for that matter that those 10 songs are actually better than the songs that are coming out on Autumn. I just wouldn't be surprised if Billy Corgan is just going to say, look, I didn't like it for whatever reason, but in fact that they'll probably be really good cuts. Now, Al, do you have anything to say on that matter?
Yeah, it was interesting when he came out to say the whole less is more. He doesn't agree with him that more is more. So people looking for bang for buck in terms of the volume, they're going to be excited about this 33 song epic rock opera. However, my opinion is that less is more. So producing an album around 40 minutes long, 10 to 12 songs is always key. B-sides are always fantastic, and the Pumpkins have always been able to provide real absolute awesome B-sides. However, in terms of like standout tracks that you look upon albums that are kind of nearly 20 years old, like Machina, I mean, I listened to that the other day, mate, and for the first 5 or 6 tracks, it's just absolute hit after hit, in my opinion. It holds up really well and worth the remastering that's coming out very soon. However, I cannot see the same happening for this particular album. I think this will be an album that will unfortunately be forgotten, and I actually think Billy Corgan will forget how to play most of these songs. And he's recently come out to say that there's a lot of songs that he's written that he can't remember the lyrics or how to play them on guitar, and heading into that golden age of years probably isn't going to help either. I think what Billy's trying to do is trying to market to the younger generation by including different sounds on their records, which might appeal to some, but I just don't think the real fan base is particularly enjoying the direction that the band's going in. And I'm one of those members, mate, and you're probably one too. So it's not necessarily about they're not producing the same sound as they did back in the 90s. It's just, for me, they're not producing a sound or a familiar tune that I really can enjoy it at all. So that's my kind of 2 cents, mate. I'm hoping that kind of clarifies a few things for our fans, and it'll be interesting in the comments to see whether people kind of agree or disagree.
Yeah, very good and well said. Look, that was really our follow-up to the initial review. So we'll see you next time. That wraps up another episode of Indie Miners. Please look to subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, and let us know if there's an album you would like us to look at. So until next time, bye for now, and thank you for watching.